Welcome back to a new year with the 905er. And this is our first episode of 2021, which is already shaping up to be at least not entirely the worst year ever on record, and hopefully a much better one than last year. Today we're going to have a roundtable discussion of sorts, and we're welcoming a guest and a friend from Burlington, Shannon Gillies, who is someone who we've known in Burlington for some time, and who is actually, I remember getting off spectacularly badly with you about 10 years ago, Shannon, and having to apologize to you immediately. And we've spoken sort of through social media and things like this, but I certainly have come to respect Shannon's opinions on many things. And also just as much when she disagrees with me as when she agrees with me. So welcome, Shannon. Thanks for coming on and being part of this discussion today.
Thanks for inviting me.
And of course, we've got Joel McLeod here as ever. Joel, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just in the corner here. Roland, don't mind me.
Hi, Joel.
Hi, how are you, Shannon?
Good. How are you?
Talk to you face to face after conversing.
I know this is the first time we've ever spoken to each other. This
is like the one of the plus sides of social media is that you get to meet people, and we're finally actually able to have an actual conversation as opposed to a discussion in 160 characters.
Yeah.
A pandemic has actually brought us together in a way that we never managed to do living in the same city for the last 20 years or however long.
I know.
Anyway, yeah, and if I wrote an introduction, Joel, I would have mentioned I would have remembered to throw it to you at the start. But anyway,
no worries.
New year, new disorganized beginnings. So anyway, Joel, what stories do you think have been coming up in the news over the Christmas period?
Well, I think everybody knows the biggest story in the 905 region is that Rod Phillips got the boot or resigned officially, is the official story for not doing what the rest of us have been doing, which is hunkering down and isolating and just living in misery for the last 8 or 9 months. So I'm not surprised that he got he resigned when you're caught like that. It was just, the entire story was just a mess of politics and just a mess of hypocrisy, in my opinion. He got what he deserved. I have no sympathy for him whatsoever, in my opinion, because there's just there's no way I could possibly defend it. I also don't really buy that Doug Ford didn't know that his finance minister just kind of took off and didn't tell him where he was going. I mean, that's the official story, but I don't buy it.
And I think his own words, he in effect admitted that he did know exactly where he was, at least by the time he got there. And several days before we heard in the news what was going on. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of sympathy either. I don't have any sympathy really. I mean, it's just incredibly boneheaded it's kind of politics 101, you would have thought. So it's amazing to find these people doing this. I was going to do one of my rage tweets the other day, and then I decided not to do it. And I guess my reservation about this story was, and I'd appreciate both your thoughts on it really, is I wish we got as angry about the situation with long-term care as we do about an MPP's vacation. And now, there's no excuse for the vacation. That's bad, and he deserves to resign. But why can't we bring the same level of political pressure onto people, say, the Minister for Long-Term Care or the Premier, who said, we're going to have an iron wall, or I can't remember what the phrase was he used, we're going to have an iron wall around our long-term care facilities. And yet, here we are again, exactly like it was back in March, with the care facilities really, having to, people are calling again for the army to be brought in. So that was my kind of slightly different take on that whole story. And no, Shannon, what are your thoughts?
I think everyone just feels so completely helpless with that situation and no one knows what to do. And I know I'm personally frustrated by the fact that it seems like there were no lessons learned about the whole LTC situation back in the spring. It was a disaster. The provincial government sent in the army. They got things under control. And you would think there would have been some lessons learned there. So what did the army do that the private companies couldn't do themselves? Learn some lessons. And it just happened all over again. And so now I think that people think if the government doesn't know what to do, I don't know what to do. I don't have the answer. We all know that something needs to be done, but there's just this frustration about who's in charge here, who's going to take care of this, and no one really knows what to do.
Well, you're absolutely right there, Shannon. There is a frustration over why are we still here? Why is it that we can't seem to get a handle on this? And I mean, something that's kind of been a running theme in the last few months on this podcast was why haven't we learned how to live with COVID? Like I understand at the start we shut everything down. We didn't go to parks, we didn't play outside. Kids were told don't go to school, all that stuff because we honestly didn't know. But the thing is, we're supposed to learn this stuff over time. We have smart people smart scientists who are learning this. And they say, no, we've discovered over time, okay, we can go outside. We can go to parks. We can, maybe kids can play outside as opposed to indoors. Okay, that's something. Okay, we can adjust our lifestyle to accommodate that. And every time that we seem to be running into these, I would say, hot spots of COVID infectiousness, it usually is because we just don't want to spend the money on it. The money, the money to properly retrofit long-term care homes so that they're safer for the residents there, to quite frankly increase the pay of the caretakers that are employed there so that they are better trained and better equipped with the necessary PPE. And to just to kind of get a better sense of how do we live with this, and to your point, Roland, about why aren't people upset? I think people are. I think there is an absolute simmering rage out there as to why is it that these care homes are this Achilles heel of our COVID-19 response. And we're told, they're handling it, they got a handle on it, and it's clear that they don't. I mean, there's this story of the long-term care home in Scarborough that is. It seems for the last couple of days, there seemed to be an increasing number of deaths, like not illnesses, deaths coming out of this home. And you got to say, God forbid, if you were one of the, if you had a loved one in that home, it'd be a nightmare. And
it's horrific.
It is. I think there's a tipping point happening in this new year of you're going to finally start seeing the poll numbers for the Tory government start to go down. I think people's patience of, you make do the best you can. I think it's starting to, I think this Rod Phillips thing is just the kind of the icing on the cake. It's going to be the one weight on the scale that's finally going to start tipping the poll numbers against them, because you got that along with the fact that they paused vaccinations for 4 days over the holiday break. It's no, I'm sorry, if I got a phone call, Joel, your family, your vaccination time is 8 a.m. Christmas Day. Yeah, I'm sorry, kids. Santa's presents have to wait. We're booking it down to the hospital to get our COVID vaccination.
It's crazy. This whole thing, we're working on banker's hours with vaccinations.
Exactly.
It's insane. There's no urgency. It's maybe we'll open this clinic. It closes at 4. We won't do it on New Year's Day. Everyone needs a rest. This is not the time for that.
Yeah, and we've got Shoppers Drug Mart and one of the other big pharmacy brands sort of lining up saying, we'll do this, we'll help. The Conservatives, that's their thing, isn't it? Get the private sector involved. Mm-hmm. And I have no objection to that. There are challenges with this vaccine and that kept very cold, but they're not, as someone was just saying on Twitter an hour or so ago, if you have a whole box of the things, they will defrost kind of on their way to the place where you're giving the injections. I was a doctor who was saying this. It's not just me making it up on the fly. So by the time you get there, they're kind of more or less at the right temperature that you actually want. There seems so many ways in which this is not an impossible hurdle to get over, and the lack of urgency is incredible. And I mean, okay, sure, Israel doesn't do Christmas, and I guess that helps. But they've vaccinated some vast number of people.
More than 10% of their population now has already been vaccinated. My thing is, I just don't understand what the plan was. It seems like they're making it up every day as they go along. I think it's their job to anticipate what the hurdles were going to be. They knew the logistical challenges. What was the plan?
Well, I mean, on that note, we had they're telling us back in the fall, go get your flu shot, right? Get your flu shot. That'll help. That's the biggest thing you can do right now to help alleviate the burden on the healthcare system. So I'm speaking from personal experience here. My family said, okay, let's go get our flu shot. Okay, so we call up our family health team, and we said, when are you handing out flu shots? And they said, we do flu shot drive-through clinics on the weekend. But we ordered like 700 doses the one night, and they went through in like an hour. Wow. Okay. Next weekend, another 700. Wow. Went through in like an hour and a half. Okay. The demand is there. So they're smart. They said, we're ordering 1,500 doses, and they only got 200 in their shipment. Nobody knows why the shortage happened. Nobody knows where these mysterious doses went off to in the ether. And so they ended up canceling the clinic. And so if my family went for about a month and a half, almost 2 months without our flu shot, even though we were actively trying to find it, we're calling up doctor's offices. Can you give me it? Nope, we don't have any. We're only doing the elderly or the very young. So we got our youngest son vaccinated quickly. But it took us, we ended up having to go online and find, where's the pharmacy that has a surplus of flu shots. And it was almost like this black market deal, right? Like I'm having to call around and be like, hey, do you have any flu shots? Can I score some flu shots from you? And like, no, man, I'm all out this week. Come back next week. Oh, okay. And I ended up going down to a pharmacy that wasn't my regular pharmacy, but I ended up going there and they gave us the flu shot. No fuss, no muss. But man, it was like I felt like I was doing like the back alley behind the place. Like, don't tell anyone that we have flu shots because you don't want to demand. It's like,
I still haven't had mine.
This was the test run.
It was the test run, and if they couldn't figure that out,
it's really embarrassing. I mean, and the kind of excuses that they're coming up with. I mean, so Christine Elliott was saying, it's the holidays. What can you do? Was kind of one response, and then we're facing staffing challenges. Well, I think any government that sort of put a call out to ensure you need to have qualified people in specialist jobs. I'm not saying anybody can step in and be a doctor. However, there are people, I am sure, who would be willing in what is a global crisis to sort of step forward and do that kind of dad's army thing of helping out. And it seems like they have no imagination of how you could use
it's always somebody else's
community
problem.
As a resource. Yeah.
It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's problem. We heard the spike in numbers was the fault of Justin Trudeau because he let people come in through the airport. Well, yeah, the reason why that became a problem is because we found out all the conservative ministers in the country are going to the vacation hotspots in the Caribbean and in Palm Springs. So, that turned out to be, like you're part of the problem there, Doug. The problem is, it's a Rick Hillier's problem for cocking up the closing the vaccines. Well, earlier that month, Doug was saying, I don't care. I'm going up to the airport and I'm going to make sure everybody gets a COVID test when they get off the plane if I have to do it myself. Well, where was that for the vaccination clinics, Doug? Right? It's always like it's all bluster and bravado with Doug Ford. I'm getting a little sick and tired of it.
Well, it really is. I mean, he's so. I keep on making jokes about the 800 pound gorilla, which is a phrase he used. I wouldn't have used if he hadn't used it first. But he's more of a kind of fluffy bunny than a gorilla really at this stage because he keeps on saying he's going to do things and then nothing happens.
Yeah, and it's too bad. I think he squandered any sort of goodwill and credibility that he had built up in the spring, when even people who weren't big fans were kind of supportive and thought, he's doing the right things. And then after maybe August, September, when he maybe opened the schools too soon, and then everything just seemed to go downhill. And now I get the sense that he's scared and he doesn't know what to do. And it makes me feel scared when our leaders don't know what they're doing. And I think they know it.
And the ministers amongst the PCs who, I guess the public might have the perception of as being slightly slightly smarter end of this spectrum. I mean, like Christine Elliott maybe has traditionally been thought as maybe not the worst, or Rod Phillips was probably a guy who's, as finance minister was seen as a safe pair of hands, I guess. But I mean, they're messing up too, and it's like, yeah, we knew that Doug was going to be Doug to an extent, and in the spring it was kind of, well, thank God he's not actually as bad as we thought he was going to be.
That's kind of what it was. He's just not as bad.
Well, but it's easy.
Boy, he made up for it.
It's easy to stand up there and say, "Okay, everybody, stay in your homes, don't do anything." Because if you remember back in the spring, the burden of keeping everybody in their homes fell on the federal government. The federal government had to come through and figure out, well, how do you tell people don't go into your job, and a business that's reliant on foot traffic going in and out of a store or a restaurant to say shut your doors for the sake of everyone, and say, well, how do I pay my bills? How do I pay my wages? How do I
feed my family next week?
Really, like my business is reliant on that interaction, and the federal government. I mean, you and I have discussed this many, many a times. How many times we've had entrepreneurs on this show to say the government helped us immensely. They came through in a pinch. They provided a lifeline. It wasn't the end all be all. It wasn't the panacea, solve all your problems. But without the federal government stepping up and digging in deep and handing out checks to people, things would have been a lot worse. And I will. I mean, I'm progressive minded, and I'm not necessarily a wholehearted Trudeau fan, but I'll give Trudeau credit that he came through in a pinch for everyday Canadians. Doug I've yet to see him actually step up. It's just been confusing messaging one after the other, and I think we're definitely seeing the cost of that. Is that there's confusion still out there. We don't know what to do. We're hoping we're going to get a vaccine soon, but I was reading online, Dr. Jennifer Kwan, who is from Burlington, did the math and said, at the current rate of vaccination, like we're looking at like 20, like 35, something like that, until we're all vaccinated. Like we get that herd immunity level. And I'm paraphrasing Dr. Kwan's numbers there, and if I got them wrong, I apologize. But
it's something very scary.
It's just like we need to step up here. Like we need to dig down deep.
We do.
And figure.
And the problem is now our numbers are so low. We know that there's more vaccine on the way. Hundreds of thousands more doses coming to Ontario in the next few months. But the frightening thing is we can't even get this right now. And what have we done? 30, 40,000 maybe in Ontario over the last couple of weeks, and it's been a bit of a disaster. How are we going to do it when there's hundreds of thousands of doses coming in if we can't even sort out how to get these small quantities done?
Well, I'm thinking of the logistics of it, and I mean, I'm glad that the priority is our long-term care homes, presumably, and our frontline workers. Good, they need to be vaccinated first. Agreed. Mm-hmm. The problem is what happens after that I'm puzzled by, because nobody's clarified what the system will be. Now, Christine Elliott has gone on the record as saying the vaccine will be mandatory, but kind of not, because you'll have to have this like COVID card to present to a restaurant or a movie theater if you want to go out for the foreseeable future, which, okay, that's a whole other can of worms that we're not going to go into today. But I'm sitting going, we know from the flu shot problem, how are we going to get people vaccinated if it's voluntary? And if it's then it becomes a free for all. If my family has to fight yours, Shannon, and yours, Roland, to go find a COVID vaccine, is that how we want this to happen? Are we going to have this weird class system of COVID vaccinated and COVID not vaccinated walking through Ontario? It's going to be chaos.
And it seems like, I mean, this is, well, my kind of pet theory is this is what happens with politicians who don't actually believe in government, that when you have something that demands a good old-fashioned big government response of kind of, mass organization of just doing whatever it takes to get the sheer numbers of people involved in something, these guys don't really believe in that way of doing things, so they don't know what to do. And which is why I always say they're not really conservatives. Because you look at it, there's been plenty of conservative governments that have been very good at organizing mass enterprises when they needed to. Think of wars or previous pandemics or whatever, and it's they because they have so little faith in government as a thing, when they're called upon to use the tools they have at their disposal, they really fall on their faces, I think. I know. Do you agree with that, Shannon? What do you think?
Yeah, they're politicians, and every decision they make, unfortunately, is political. And so we always have to keep in mind, and Roland, you and I tweeted about this a little bit. You were talking about one example, I think the person in St. Catharines. We have to keep in mind that they may be making decisions that are best for them politically. It just so happens that right now, the majority of Ontarians do support lockdowns and shutdowns, I should call them. And that is probably the only reason that Doug Ford has made that decision. Had it not been in his political interest to do so, he may not have made the best, decisions for us health-wise. And not that he is making the best decisions now, but it just makes us realize the role of government. Are these people doing things for political reasons, or are they actually looking out for the best interests of all the residents?
And I think it's a really interesting point, actually, because I do hope, and I think I've got enough experience to believe that there are a lot of politicians who do absolutely that those sort of political imperatives that drive decision making, where everything is kind of colored by, am I going to get reelected? It's definitely a huge element. But there are those people who kind of also at the same time believe that they're doing, that public service is an important thing, and believe in the power of their office to do incredible good.
Sure.
It seems to me like, because those guys don't really, they think their primary responsibility is to get out of the way of people, when they just don't know what to do in this kind of situation. Now, actually, I was going to say, the other question, it was an interesting comparison, actually, between Rod Phillips in Ontario and then Nikki Ashton, who is an NDP MP from Manitoba. And I actually thought it was an interesting contrast there. I don't know what you guys thought, because she at least alleges that she was traveling because her grandmother is sick. Very sick. She still lost her job as a critic, and I kind of thought that was maybe a bit on the hard side. As someone who has a relative overseas, the rules are you shouldn't be traveling except for essential reasons. St. Bart's is not an essential reason. A dying grandmother, maybe, I think, probably is an essential reason. Do you see it from that point of view as well?
It's a hard one. It's hard. This is a tough situation for a lot of people. I listen to Michelle Rempel, and her husband's over there, and yeah, it's too bad. She's got a husband in the States that she can't see, and his mother is apparently very ill, and any human being understands that that's a tough situation. But you look at all the people here that are not going to see loved ones. We had a friend of my husband's passed away a few months ago, sadly, suddenly, of a heart attack. And his wife could not see her friends, be consoled by friends, could not have a funeral. And, everyone is having a tough time. Not to mention all the people, losing people in the I can't even see as they're dying. So, I I'm not going to say these people are terrible for going to see their loved ones, obviously, but we have to realize that everyone's in the same boat, and it's a tough time.
I kind of agree with what you're saying there, Shannon. I actually had this discussion with my wife, and I do think Nikki Ashton was probably unduly punished for it, because I really you have a point though that you're right. There are loved ones who have died of COVID, and we aren't able to grieve for them how we properly should. There isn't that period of we can't go over to friends and family's house and say, how can I be there for you? We're actually told don't be there for you. So there's that angle to consider, absolutely, and it is a bit about fairness. Can I blame Nikki Ashton or really Michelle Rumpel for saying I want to see my family going through, facing death? No, I can't. I think it's a very human response of both of them, and I understand their pain at that dilemma. I think if you're going to be a political leader, though, and a leader of your community, and you want to be a leader of this country, though, you might have to step up and raise your standards a little bit, and you kind of have to fall on your sword a bit. I don't have an easy answer. I do think Michelle Rumpel's little diatribe on Twitter about woe is me, and it kind of I thought it was interesting because I was like, I get the anguish of not being able to see your husband who lives in the States, who is looking after his mother, and you clearly do love your husband and your mother-in-law. I get that, and I get everything you're saying up to the part of but the only reason why I can't, thanks Rod Phillips, because now I'm going to get caught at the airport if I try to sneak out. It's like, no, that's the point. Like, you can if the video is just like, I'm pissed off and I'm raging that I can't see my loved ones because of this problem, nobody would have faltered, and I would have said, you know what, Michelle, like, you're right, we need to figure out a way to help you out. Like, how do we bring our numbers down and get a better grasp on this situation? Instead, it was like, woe is me, and I'm going to get caught, and that's not fair. It's like, you missed the point.
And the only reason was that the CBC vulture reporters would catch her.
It's like, you missed the point, Michelle. You missed the point by just a hair. And that's kind of where, and with the Nikki Ashton case, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, if she was able to use her privileges as an MP to circumvent restrictions on the rest of us, absolutely. She should be punished for that. Like, I don't think because you're an MP, if you're just going for personal reasons, you get to flaunt your privilege at the airport and sneak out underneath the gate, as it were. It's a tricky situation. I think maybe like a public chastising from Jagmeet Singh might have been more sufficient in Nikki Ashton's case than a full reduction.
Well, actually, what I thought was maybe the real point here is that how did she not know what her leader's position on that was? She apparently kind of asked around Parliament, I think, for kind of advice. I mean, not from the party, but from whoever the people are in Parliament who deal with this kind of thing, and got their advice. Well, it should be crystal clear to everybody.
There should be no ambiguity. Yeah. I think that's the situation in Alberta. Kenny was saying, I guess it's been a bit ambiguous about what the standards are. From our perspective, we think, was it ambiguous? We think they should have known.
It comes back here to Ontario as well. Like, Rod Phillips is not some lowly backbench MP that, I'm Rod who? Like, I'm not going to miss him if he's their finance minister. Like, if there's a crisis, if all of a sudden we're like, we need to dig deep and we need to fund this emergency COVID or whatever happened. Like, you're telling me that you don't know where your finance minister is to call him up and like, Rod, get your tail back here now. I got a cabinet meeting right now. I need you on the line, and I need you to authorize, monies to be spent on this crisis or whatever have you. You're telling me that you don't know, like, no, like, he's not a nobody. He's too important to not know where he is. And if you don't know where he is, then you are a horrible boss, and you should be fired.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting point. And then just having the lid raised on the kind of scheduled tweets Which he said, well, all MPPs do it. And I was like, well, I've known a few MPPs and I'm not aware of They're always out at events taking pictures and doing it right then. So I've not been aware of the scheduling thing.
There's scheduling. Like I know that MPs and MPPs do schedule tweets. And of course, you schedule a Christmas tweet to go out because, I'm like, I want to spend it with my family. I want to open presents and, have a cup of coffee in the morning. I don't want to sit there like, I got my hair fixed up right and have my wife videotape me or video chat me on my iPhone so I can tweet it out that morning. You record it beforehand and you get it scheduled out. That's nothing new. The deception was in, no, I need it to cover my butt so I can go get a tan on in St. Bart's. That's the no on that story.
And such professionally taken photographs as well, which, those things don't come cheap.
The one I loved was the National Maple Syrup Day, where you have to pull the flannel shirt.
Special some Bart's maple syrup.
And someone had made the point of saying, that's funny, he never celebrated National Pancake Day or whatever it was. I don't know if it was the syrup or pancake day in other years, just happened to celebrate it this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I think that probably brings us up to date on the various things that have been happening. Partly 905 and partly the province and partly kind of nationally, I guess. But I don't know. I guess we could finish off by maybe saying, what are our hopes for 2021, and what do we think? Do we think that everything's going to be fixed by the end of the year, or is it going to be? Are we still going to be zooming everybody because we're not allowed to see them, and not just because we don't actually want to meet them? Shannon, I'll throw it to you first.
I don't know. I think when we first got news of the vaccines, everyone right away thought, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and thought we'd start seeing things turn around in the next couple of months. And I think it's going to take much longer than that. I think everyone's a little bit worried about this new variant, if that's going to change what happens. Hopefully, it won't be a factor. So I think it's going to be a rough year. And I'm just waiting to see just some kind of a downward trend, just to see those curves just start to at least level off. And then I think people will start feeling a little more hopeful as the vaccinations go up, see that some of those numbers decline. But the way things are going, I think it's going to be at least the summer before we even really see things start to turn around. And I think it's going to be bumpy. I think the economy is going to have a rough go. There's only so long that the government can sort of keep things afloat. To ask them to keep an entire country afloat for a year is a lot to ask. And I think we're going to be paying the price for that necessarily. I mean, we didn't have a choice for years to come.
Yeah. Joe?
I'm picturing 2021 will be the year of impatience. I think it's going to be, Shannon was right that the vaccine news gave us a lot of hope at the end of 2020 that we're, oh my gosh, this might actually end. I think we're going to see the reality, though, that that end is tantalizingly close, but still so far away, because we're going to see the problems of trying to, appease everyone and get a vaccine out the door. You're gonna see people impatient because they aren't vaccinated, but I think you'll see the rise of, how we had the anti-maskers in 2020. We're going to have the vaccinated people in 2021 who are going to be pissed off that they're still stuck under lockdown restrictions or any kind of restrictions, because I've got my vaccine. I should be allowed to go to a restaurant. I should be allowed to go to a movie theater. I should be allowed to go to a gym, et cetera, et cetera. And I got my COVID card, and they're going to sit there and say, yeah, but are we going to lift the restrictions so soon? And the rest of us are now stuck indoors, which my conspiracy tinfoil hat theory will be that you'll see a black market of COVID cards being made up for people who are just, I need to get out. And that's my firm prediction. I'll put that one in pen because I think you'll see that.
We're going to hold you to it at the end of the year, Joe.
Only to it. I wouldn't be surprised if you see like a black market COVID card industry of people who are just, I'm sick of being caught up and I don't understand what my neighbor across the street got their vaccine and I'm still stuck locked up in my house, and they're able to go to a restaurant and to a theater and go to their gym and see their family and all that stuff. So I'm going to doctor up a COVID card so I can go out. Is what I think will happen. I think my hope is we're going to see a bit more, a little bit more changes to the economy. I hope that we're going to see more, I guess, a more egalitarian economy. I think we're a little bit done with, we're going to see people who are frontline workers and people who are minimum wage workers being finally, they're going to step up and say, no, I was so important that you couldn't live without me during the pandemic. I want my fair share. I want my $15 an hour or whatever the fair rate will be at the time. And I think you'll see people demand more. They'll say, like, we're tired of, especially in the cases of like where we heard of landlords and other corporations like the Walmarts walking with huge profits of 2020, to say, why did they walk away with huge profits, but the mom and pop shop on Main Street got, they're now indebted, beyond repair. That's not fair, and it's not. So there'll be massive talk of massive economic reforms in 2021, especially as the vaccines start to roll out.
It would be nice if, and I don't know, I can't say this is a prediction because I'm far too pessimistic for that, but it'd be nice if by the end of the year this is moving towards being over, and I think that's not a certainty, even with vaccines, even with everything. What stops a variant coming that is resistant to a vaccine, and then we have to start over. And, let's hope it doesn't happen. I mean, there's good reason to be hopeful. But I hope that if we are coming out of it in the second half, last part of this year, that it's a bit like the end of the Second World War or something, where people use it as an opportunity to reassess what our priorities are as a society. And to, out of the Second World War kind of came our modern welfare states, our, universal health care, social assistance and things like that. That would be good. I'd like to see that, and just some of the old cliches of, people who take benefits are lazy, when we've all kind of taken benefits this year, or a very large number of us have. Those cliches might go away and allow for a more intelligent discussion around how we care for people who are struggling for whatever reason. That's certainly not a prediction. That's just my vague hope. My prediction is this year will be slightly better than last year, but not by much.
That's a safe one. I think that's a safe one.
Yeah. Let's just hope it's not worse. Okay, we should probably leave it there. Having completely sidestepped the issue of making a real prediction, so that Joel, you're going to have your feet held to the fire, but not me.
Well, let's hope it. We'll see what happens on December 31, 2021.
So thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back on Thursday with another guest called Shannon Gillies. Funnily enough, we'll be talking about the experience of being a political candidate, the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. So I hope you'll check back in for that episode. Thanks, and bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
You looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.